All right, Shalom. All right, let me get straight into this lesson, but I'm gonna be dealing with this whole. Let me pause this real quick. 1 second, Salakia. So I'm gonna be dealing with this whole made up, you know, nationality, nationality of so-called African people, and they even call you African American. That was coined in 1988 by the Boule himself, Jesse Jackson, which has been bought and paid for a long time ago. So you're gonna get a thorough lesson, history lesson dealing with this word Africa, right? So there's no such thing as African people. There's no such thing as African Americans, which would be the so-called Negroes as we know today, right? So they created this word to cause confusion. And you go into the word Babylon, it means confusion. And you got a lot of people that's confused of our nation. And you can just look on these comment boards and see that our people literally believe in everything else besides the truth. They all over the MF in place. You got one of them believe in the book of Joshua. You got some of them believe in the book of Adam. You got some of them believe in the Nephilim, right? You got some of them believe they mix in different things. They believe in the Quran. Then they mix it in with the Bible. You got some people that just believe in the so-called Old Testament of the Bible. Confusion, right? So let me get into this short video that I'm gonna get into this lesson. Matter of fact, I want to make another point. And they gave you this narrative in school that Africans sold Africans, right? More confusion, right? So I'm gonna play this and I'm gonna get into this lesson.
Africa is home to 54 countries, full of diverse cultures and over 2,000 languages. The current population of Africa is estimated to be 1.46 billion people, based on the latest United Nations estimates. The term Africa was first initiated by the Europeans and came to use through the Roman.
Whoa, did you hear that? So I'm gonna get into that word Europeans. So, when you wake up to the truth, you're not just studying the Bible, you studying everything. Let me back this up for you. So I'm gonna go into this word etymology, and I'm gonna show you why that word is so important. Because if you don't know what words properly mean, right, you're gonna be lost in this world. So that's the consensus of our people. They don't know what words properly mean. So these words can, lead them in ignorance by them not understanding what words properly mean. And that's why they stumble up and fall up into the Bible, because they don't know what words properly mean. Play this again.
4.6 billion people, based on the latest United Nations estimates. The term Africa was first initiated by the Europeans and came to use through the Roman conquests between 264 BC and 146 BC, led by Publius Cornelius Scipio and the people of Carthage, which is presently known as Tunisia. The word Africa was derived both from Greek and Roman origin, with the word Frike, meaning cold and horror, and the Latin Africa, meaning sunny. So, what was...
Did you hear that? Right. So this word Africa and this name is all false. And when they say Europeans, that means the so-called white man. So let's get all into this lesson. So you're gonna learn today. I ain't gonna even get all that deep, but I'm just gonna keep it real simple so you can keep up with me. I'm gonna open up with this first scripture. Right. So to call yourself African, you got a lot of these Hamitic nations, Ham, right? Now you have different tribes of Ham that were spread out through Africa, so called, right? And you had the Israelites that's mingled among them and other nations as well. But that name Africa is not its original name, right? So that's stupid to call yourself African or to call yourself African American. And that's even more stupid to believe in so-called Africans, Africans, right? So let's get into it. Now, sometimes we might use the name Africa for familiarity so you can understand our people that's waking up can understand what we're saying, but we know what it properly means. Hosea 4:6, it says, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. What's emphasized here? Lack of knowledge. Lack of knowledge. That's why they are so destroyed, right? Our people don't know nothing. And when they get into these things, they go into confusion, right? They're not thoroughly going over things and making sure they in truth, right? Because they don't have the spirit to assist them. You can't do this on your own will, all right? It says, because thou hast rejected knowledge. So when we bring the truth to our people, they reject it, they shun it, they say it's unimportant, of whatever other reason they have, right? They don't see the value in it, which is stupid. It says, I will also reject thee. So let me go here. Let me show you something. So what does etymology mean? Right. So when you come into the truth, you're studying a lot of different things. You basically are trying to be a Bible scholar, right? And just a well-rounded person in the world to know a little bit about everything, right? And that's something that our people really are not. They are not well-rounded. They one-dimensional in a lot of cases. So why is this word so important to know? Etymology. At the very top, it said the study of the origin of words. So the reason why the so-called white man can run circles around our people with his witchcraft, with his wordplay, right? Because they don't know what words properly mean, right? That's how they can do the religious indoctrination by telling you words that you don't know that what the origin comes from, right? He says the study of the origin of words and the way in which their meanings have changed throughout history. This is vitally important to understand the truth, is to know what words properly mean, right? So let's go to this word Africa, right? So that clip pretty much broke it down, but I wanted to elaborate more. So it's a mixture of a Latin and Greek word, but it goes back into Latin. Latin at the very top, Africa. So the so-called white man renamed Africa, right? They've been calling themselves the Europeans, the British, the Spanish, the French, right? So on and so forth. The Australians, the Canadians, the white people, Americans, these are all Edomites that's disguising themselves under these pseudo nationalities that are not biblical, right? So Africa goes back into Latin, right? It says African land, Libya, but you get the point, right? This goes back into Latin. It says right here at the top, it says the Latin word originally was used only in reference to the region around modern Tanzania, right? So to call yourself African, right, or African American, so you got them Hamites that refer to themselves as being so-called Africans, they in stupidity as well. But it's another thing for you to call yourself African American, right? And you had an Edomite named Scipio Africanus, right? This was incorporated inside of his name, and also Amerigo Vespucci. That's a whole nother lesson, right? So this name goes back into Latin, which goes back into the white man renaming it Africa, and people ignorantly out of that point calling themselves Africans and African Americans out of stupidity and ignorance, right? So let's go here. This is the book of Psalms 49 and 11. It says their inward thought is that their houses shall continue forever. So that's the so-called white man inner workings of his mind, right? That's why he's building back better. That's why everywhere you see in most of these cities, they're under construction, right? It says forever. They think they think the party gonna last forever. But the thing about a party, you know, you brothers, your sisters been young before. The party eventually comes to an end. It says in their dwelling places to all generations. So they think this essence is gonna last forever. It's over. It says they call their lands after their own names. So most of these pseudo nationalities that people call themselves today are after the so-called white man names, right? So he renamed Africa, right? He relate what you know as Africa. He renamed it that. It wasn't called Africa. It's really the land of Ham, right? But this what people flow with because every people don't know better, so they just ignorantly call these people Africans, and they eat, and our people call themselves African American, right? So let's go do a word search in the Bible. 1 second. All right, so I just put Africa in there. That's how you get the word African, right? So zero results. So there's no nationality in the Bible called African people, right? So these was the sons of Ham, and you got the different sons of Ham, like so on and so forth, right? That's a whole nother lesson as well. But I'm proving to you that it's no nationality of people in the Bible called so-called Africans. So stop saying that. Now, if you make it a point and you're using it so people can know what you're talking about, there's something different, right? So, but you have to know what what words actually mean. Let's go here. So these are true biblical nationalities out of the Bible that the Most High set up. He didn't set up African people. He didn't set up so-called African American people. And African American is folly, right? This is the table of nations right here. Israel, Yashala. That's the 12 tribes of Israel. You got the so-called white man, Adawam. It's like you get Edom, right? You got Elam, Moab would be the so-called Chinese. Ammon would be the so-called Japanese. Cush would be the so-called Ethiopians. Mizraim would be the so-called Egyptians, and so on and so forth. So these nations are not used today, right? Because the so-called white man wanted to remove the Most High master plan and put his own master plan in place that people follow to the T because they're ignorant, right? So let's go here. So they gave you this narrative that so-called Africans sold Africans in the transatlantic slave trade. Why did they give you that narrative? So they can push that term African on you to keep you in confusion so you won't find out who you really are, right? These devils don't do anything without a reason. They did it for a reason, right? Right here, the Atlantic slave trade or transatlantic slave trade involved the transportation by slave traders of enslaved African people. You see how they interjected that word African, which I showed you that word goes back into a Latin word, right? And it was renamed, the continent, as you know, as Africa, was renamed that by so-called Europeans, which would be the so-called white man, all right? Let me go here. Let me show you some more. So they call themselves Europeans, but you have to know, again, you have to know what words properly mean, right? So how you get Europeans is from the word Europe, right here. Remember, etymology is the origin of words, what they properly mean, so you can understand when it's a truth and when it's a lie. It says from Latin, Europa, right? Europe, from Greek, Europe, right? So this is, again, go back into the so-called white man. Let me show you something else that's going to blow your mind. It says Europa at the very top. In Greek mythology, Europa, ancient Greek, was a Phoenician princess from Tyre, Lebanon, and the mother of all of King Minos of Crete. It says the continent of Europe was named after her. Do you understand what this means? So that's no such thing as Europeans either, right? It came from this deity, right? That's how they got the name Europe. And I'm reading this this Wikipedia, right? Read that again for you. It says the continent of Europe is named after her. You hear this? Right? So that's how you got the name Europe. And that's how you got Europeans, which Europeans is no such thing as European people. These are so-called white people, the nation of Edom, that renamed themselves Europeans and renamed it and relabeled that name as Europe, right? Because that is really Asia that so-called Europe is in. What they do these things to cause confusion, right? So I showed you without a shadow of a doubt, there's no such thing as Africans. This was a new concept when the so-called white man, right, renamed the continent Africa. And he had people foolishly call themselves Africans, like they call themselves Nigerians. Nigerians was named after the so-called white lady, right? I mean, a so-called white lady named it after the nigger river. I do a lesson on that too, right? So people just call themselves, folly. Jamaican, that's all folly. All these names that you hear are all made up for the most. Hopefully this lesson was edifying. Call Allah, Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shah, Bahashim, Rakat, Kodash. Shalom.